Okay, so excuse me, apologies for my cough, by the way. I don't have COVID, it's just an asthma cough, so but you're safe on the other side of Zoom. So this was just some learnings from Brighton SEO and MeasureFest, and also we've also just recently had a Measure Summit last week. Myself and the team were all I went down there for pretty much our first conference in over a year, maybe a year and a half or so. Some of us were in person and the rest were remote. It's kind of nice to get out of the office actually and sort of meet people face to face, which is cool. Just for this sort of talk, we're going to sort of play some snippets from Brighton SEO. We're not allowed to play the full videos, and we would sort of highly encourage you to sort of play, buy the replay kind of option. But we'll just kind of play the bits we think are most relevant or most kind of useful. I think that replay option also gives you the ability to attend the online version or in-person kind of version. So as I mentioned, this analytics meetup, it's actually been running for about 3 years, but not much has sort of happened on it in the last year or so. But we have actually got about 380 members that are part of this meetup, and it's something I'd quite like to kind of expand out and restart. So thanks for joining. Also about myself, so I've sort of split off from what used to be Accelerate and now started my own pure play analytics agency, and it's kind of a chance for me to kind of do what I love and also sort of expand out the team and tackle some sort of interesting projects. Which are kind of bigger and better. I mean, our focus is more on kind of empowering both people and clients to kind of get the most out of their data, specifically focusing on Google Analytics and Tag Manager. So we're going to jump into some our best kind of bits from those two events and do kind of Q&A at the end. And we're probably going to run this event maybe every 2 weeks. Just to keep momentum going. So we're kind of on the lookout for topics. If people want us to talk, cover a specific sort of item, feel free to kind of put links in the chat on the right if there is something like a burning issue they want us to investigate or cover in more detail. As I said, a quick bit about us in beautiful Bristol. Our offices are kind of based next to the train station. When we're normally doing about sort of 1 day sort of a week in the office and the rest kind of remote. We've been doing Google Analytics and GTM for too long to count now, a long time, with a focus on that strategic planning, site audits, health checks, Google Tag Manager, GTM, and then doing a lot more stuff on CRO, personalization, BigQuery, GA4, and attribution, and such. Companies we work with in lots of different sectors, though they generally tend to be kind of a sort of largest of companies. So I'm going to hand the baton over to you now, so you can sort of talk about your sort of favourite one from the talk. So let me just see how this is going to work. Just try pressing share screen.
Yeah, I've got it. Just 1 second. Let's get the slides up. Yeah, so I'm Will. I'm from I've been working with Phil for almost 3 years now, and was one of his first employees at Accelerate. So we've been through it. And I'm one of the digital marketing managers currently at MeasureMinds. I'm just getting the slides up here. I can share my screen. Yeah, sorry about that. So yeah, I went to Brighton SEO with Phil and Chris and a few other members of the team. And there was a couple talks in particular that I enjoyed. They were more from the technical SEO standpoint. So one of them was to do with 5 steps to 100% Google page speed success. That was by Joe Williams. And I don't know what level your SEO knowledge will be, but it was pretty good for, I think, all levels, if I'm honest. And just to summarize, 5 of those steps was to ensure clean code. Code on your website, you don't want bloated code via plugins or anything else. To install a Pagespeed plugin, which is one of the points that I'm going to talk about. Upgrade your web host, improve largest contentful paint, and improve time to interactive. So as I said, point 2 is what I'm going to be talking about first, and that's install a Pagespeed plugin. So essentially what Pagespeed plugins are designed to do is, it's in the name, speed up your site. And it does this via a number of methods. It can be done by optimizing images and minification and a number of other things too. And one thing in particular, which is WP Rocket, took Joe's page speed from 50% to 97% in one case. I'm just going to play a 2-minute clip of this. And just let me know if in the chat if you can't hear anything like that.
Page Builder and Speed. Okay, so for step 2, it's install a Pagespeed plugin. Now, my top 3 WordPress Pagespeed plugins are, number 3, it's Nitro Pack. So this actually has a free version as well as a premium version, so you can test it out quite quickly. And I found the results are really good. Number 2 is a much smaller one. It's called Flying Press, but I would probably say they're the most cutting edge out of the 3. And number 1, which is the one that I use, is WP Rocket. It has a nice balance of new features, really good scores, and I find it really stable. It tends to not conflict very much with themes and plugins. Okay, so when I installed WP Rocket, we went from a 37% right up to a 97% Pagespeed score. We could see largest contentful paint went from 6 seconds right up to 2.4 seconds. So I was really happy with the results we got. Now, you may be wondering, but why are the scores so slow without WP Rocket? And I thought Oxygen Builder was fast. Well, Oxygen Builder is fast because it has really lean code, but the JavaScript from other plugins was affecting our scores. So we had things like a live chat widget, an email capture widget, and our video player was in JavaScript as well. And these were having a significant impact in our Pagespeed scores. Now, luckily in WP Rocket, it's really easy to defer and to delay JavaScript, which had a massive impact in our Pagespeed score. And I was actually quite surprised at how much impact it had. So when I disabled those 2 features, so delaying and deferring JavaScript, our scores went from 97% right down to 50%. So the key takeaway from this step is you'll want to defer and delay long JavaScript requests. While Pagespeed plugins offer many features, the ones that optimize JavaScript the best make the biggest difference. Okay, so for step 3, it's to upgrade your web.
So there we can see what Joe's basically saying is that there's a huge difference that these Pagespeed plugins make. And one of the biggest ones here was just the deferring and delaying of JavaScript code. So when you have things that are quite heavy in terms of their code, so plugins like widgets and little chat icons and things like that, it's actually possible to delay those being loaded to the page and instead load the most important elements to the page first for the user. And with WP Rocket, as you heard him say, it's particularly easy to do that kind of thing. So these were, as you saw, Joe's top 3 WordPress Pagespeed plugins. I would definitely recommend doing your own research on this kind of thing too. Don't always rely on what works for one person. For example, I know he mentioned Oxygen Builder and its lean code. Oxygen Builder is a site builder, and it's what works really well for Joe, but also it might not work as well for your site. So it's always worth doing your research on these things. and how they affect your site in particular. And so his 5th point was improve time to interactive. And so he had quite an interesting technique of how to improve this. Again, I've got a little clip here that I'll just show you. Let's move that out of the way. Bit of scrubbing. Yeah.
And the steps already. Okay, and that brings us to the last step. Step 5, improve time to interactive. Now, according to Google, time to interactive TTI measures how long it takes a page to become fully interactive. And I've got to admit, at this stage, I was running out of Pagespeed ideas. I couldn't think what I could do to get from 99% right up to 100%. But then I kind of came up with what I'm calling the isolation Pagespeed technique. Now, I know quite a lot of us have suffered with isolation recently, and this isn't COVID related. This is essentially looking at a web page and isolating or removing one aspect of the web page. So your website has probably got a header, main content. A web page may have a sidebar, and it's probably got a footer. So what I did, and you may need to get your web developer to help with this, and you might want to test it on a staging environment rather than your live environment. But I basically just removed the heading, run it through Google Pagespeed Insights. Has it improved the score? It hadn't. So then I did the same thing with the footer. And this was quite interesting because I could see there was a big image and I could see that there was this email capture element there. So if anything was going to be slowing it down, it was going to be one of those two elements. So I started with the image and I investigated that further. And I found out that the background CSS image was not lazy loading through WP Rocket. Now, there was something I could do to still have the image as a background CSS image and for WP Rocket to lazy load it, but I actually just substituted it for a standard image and WP Rocket picked it up fine. And what that meant was that our Pagespeed score had jumped to the elusive 100%. So I was really, really pleased with that. So the big tip from this last step, and this applies to all Pagespeed metrics, so it's not just time to interactive, it's the isolation Pagespeed technique. So rather than optimize individual resources, so say like an image, start by removing a section of the page or even removing a plugin and test the Pagespeed again to diagnose the biggest bottlenecks. Now, after that, you can obviously optimize resources.
So I think it's fairly self-explanatory what he's saying there. But I just thought it was a really interesting technique on how to, kind of find those last bits that are bringing you down on your page and you can't really understand where it's coming from or why. I think the only thing to add on to that, I know you did mention it briefly, when you do this for yourself, I'd definitely recommend doing it on a staging site rather than messing up your main website or worse, your boss's website. So those were two of the tips that I got from Joe Williams' 5 Steps to 100% Google Pagespeed Success. I thought it was a really good talk, and I would recommend either contacting Joe yourself via LinkedIn, he's on LinkedIn, or getting a replay ticket for Brighton SEO and watching the rest of that talk. It was really, really good. And the second one was by Lee Foote, and it was how to use your products to sub-categorize your website with Python. And I think Lee does actually a really good job in explaining this quite briefly. The video does go into how to, how the actual code works. And I don't think it's totally necessary to look at all that because it gives you all the instructions on how to use it and all the resources, on these slides here, but also on the video. So again, probably another one to get the replay for, but I'll just play this video here.
So first of all, the benefits of sub-categorization. It's one of the most effective ways to win more traffic from search engines. Yet it's very often underutilized or not used to full effect. So to give you an example, this sofa category contains many types of sofas, all listed together into a single category. So we've got leather sofas, velvet sofas, and lounge sofas. So grouping each product type into subcategories would better align them to search demand. So if we were to create 3 new subcategories, one for leather sofas, one for velvet sofas, and one for lounge, we would actually align those new landing pages to an additional 21,000 plus searches per month. So this method will produce a lot of additional traffic for any e-commerce site. And it's really good for users as well. So if I was looking for a leather sofa, I would expect them all to be contained into a single category. Another thing we generally tend to recommend to clients is to automatically map internal searches directly to categories. So by having a leather sofa page, we can actually map leather sofa internal search directly to that page, and it's usually a better result than the search software. So it's really good for users. There is a problem though. The current methods to find this opportunity are slow, manual, and labor intensive. It usually involves pretty much just eyeballing the opportunity by using keyword data or just looking at the products. This is usually enough to catch the obvious opportunities, but it leaves a lot on the table and it doesn't scale. And sometimes the keyword data can suggest an opportunity when there aren't actually enough products to support a new subcategory. So we thought there must be a better way to do this. And we wrote a Python script to automate the process and do the hard work for us. So the products actually suggest the categories for us. So we can see all the leather sofas actually suggested the leather sofa category automatically, which has 19,000 searches per month on average. So that site was called Cox & Cox, and after QAing, we found 185 new subcategory opportunities with a combined search volume of 1,400,000, which is not too shabby. We also ran the script on Homebase, and we found opportunity to create 1,650 subcategories with over 13 million estimated monthly searches. So this would take a long time to do manually, and it also assumes you could work as efficiently as a computer. So at the end of the talk, I'm actually going to share the.
So as you can see there, I would agree with Lee that 1.4 million additional monthly searches is definitely not too shabby, just as 13 million isn't either. And for any of you people, if you may be looking at a pretty messy e-commerce site, that would be a great way to bring in some extra monthly searches just by subcategorizing your products. And this tool does all of it for you. Yeah, I think it kind of speaks for itself, that kind of traffic that it's pulling in. These, by the way, these slides will be available to you after, so I know there's links on here to these things, but we'll talk about that soon. So I'm just going to pass over to Phil again, and Phil's going to talk about some of the talks that he enjoyed.
Cool. Thanks for that, Will. That's really, really good. Let me just jump to here. So hopefully you can see my screen. We also attended the MeasureFest event kind of the day before Brighton SEO. So I picked kind of three talks from that. The first one I picked, and I'll just explain why I picked this. So it was Yali from Snowplow, and he. So Snowplow is kind of like similar to Google Analytics, but it's normally sort of hosted on your own environment. But he highlighted a thing to me which I kind of knew about, but I didn't realize how much of a problem it is at the moment. And that's the sort of power that Apple has over tracking. And this is not just Facebook tracking, but also Google Analytics and Google AdWords kind of conversions. So because his tool is a little bit harder to detect because it's not hosted on Google, sort of on a Google Analytics.com domain. It kind of I wouldn't say bypasses, but it's less likely to be detected by Apple's sort of intelligent tracking protection. So the way that I looked at this was, it's almost like antivirus tools which are able to detect viruses without them being in a known virus database. So Apple is kind of working the same way. It's sort of like if it moves like a cat, kind of like jumps like a cat, etc. It's a cat. They're sort of the same approach applies to trackers. If it's sending to all these sites are sending to the same server, be it googleanalytics.com, and they've got pixels all pointing to the same place, then it's a tracker. So it was interesting to see his tool was a way of kind of getting around that particular problem. So I'll just sort of play the part of his slides relating to that, which is this bit. So hopefully you can hear the sound on this.
If you're tracking them as a third party across the websites, and since then more and more browser manufacturers have sort of followed suit, and so there's been this kind of war on third party tracking. But that war really stepped up a gear when Apple entered the fray with intelligent tracking prevention and iOS 14.5 in the last few months. And so what's really been happening is there's been a bit of an arms race. The Facebooks of the world and the other kind of companies in the digital ad ecosystem have been using more and more sophisticated methods to track users across websites to try and work around the measures that the browser manufacturers have introduced. So Facebook, for example, started to use cookies that were first party but set client side with some other technology to track those users. And what Apple are doing is they're really upping their technology game to try and spot those effectively loopholes that Facebook's and of the world are looking to exploit and shut them down. And in doing so, they're really having a very significant impact on that third-party tracking. And on iOS 14.5, they're doing something similar in the mobile app ecosystem. So these moves present marketers and analysts with two very significant challenges, and those are. So
I'll stop this. So the other, so in essence, he's saying you need to either move or have a backup system that is not entirely reliant on a single server, be it Google Analytics as an example there. Or you need to beef up your first-party data. When we talk about first-party data, what we're talking about is so email addresses. It's data that a user provides to you that you can use to identify that user or information about them. And I'm going to jump to the second. Actually, I think he's about to go into it now. So it's going to need it's a two-pronged attack. It's going to be having tools such as GTM server-side or Snowplow, which are less likely to get blocked by Apple. And the second bit, which is using logged-in data, email addresses to kind of re-identify and correctly identify those users. So I'll just continue play on the second bit he's going to talk about.
The things I want to focus on these talks today. The first is, we're working for organizations, for companies that are advertising online, and we want to be able to measure the effectiveness of that advertising so that we can optimize that ad spend. That's one of the really nice things about advertising in digital, is you get great data about how effective your ads, and you can use that to optimize the spend. And that's become very difficult because many people in the industry have relied on third parties to do that measurement for us, and third-party data collection isn't working so well. So that's the first challenge. The second challenge is, how do we advertise now that third-party channels are that much less effective?
And the third point he also mentions is if anyone's using affiliate tracking, that's not going to really work in a kind of an Apple ITP world. So it means that anyone using affiliate window has to move to kind of GTM server side, because there's no real option, because affiliate tracking is primarily a third party. So yeah, I'll jump to the second bit where he talks more about first party data. I think it's around here. Okay, here we go.
Purchase. You've got to figure out, what is the rule? What is the set of people I want to target with my campaign in this universe of users that I have? The second thing you've got to do is then actually, once you've got your rule, compute who is in your segment.
So once you've got people's email addresses, you know how they are. There's basically tools that can be run on that group of users to cluster them into automatic user groups. And what he goes on to say is that by kind of beefing up your first party data and running analysis on that first party data, the output of it is you get a USP versus your competitors, in that you understand your users and your customers better than your competitors, and then you can use that for your email campaigns, your remarketing campaigns, etc. So in a Google Analytics world, this would be pushing the data into BigQuery, running sort of groupings in BigQuery, and then pushing that data back into Google Analytics. So this is what he means by first-party segmentation.
And depending on how complicated your segment definition is, this task might be varying levels of complexity, and we'll come back to this in a bit more detail in a second.
Cool. I'm going to jump to the other sort of talk. So the other one that I thought was quite interesting was Larius Stoy. So she did an analysis of site speed data, but she used not only the Google kind of Crux database, which is basically a cache of the homepage of 1 million websites and how fast each of those sites load. But she also appended it with other data from Screaming Frog. So Screaming Frog has the ability to sort of work out site speed as it crawls through a site. So she joined those two things together to get a kind of unique view of how a site is performing. One of the problems with the Crux data is it literally is a month old. So developers could optimize a site and make it brilliant, but then because there's a latency of a month, and also it's only really viewing the homepage, they don't know if it's worked or not. So this was a solution to that 1 month latency, and it was visualized in some quite cool kind of Data Studio reports in terms of how she did that. I'm going to jump to her slides in here and just press play on this one.
As a clickable element with a link to web dev resources, just in case you're unfamiliar about how to resolve a particular issue. Then you can also filter pages by metric performance category. You can see all the pages that pass, fail, or need improvement in any of the 3 metrics. Null values are excluded in here. You can also sort and filter pages by savings opportunities and values. You can see all of the individual opportunities on a page level for an individual URL. You can also sort and filter per metric value. You can finally filter the pages based on the keyword in the URL. This can be specifically useful if you have URLs that you have recently improved and you want to check up on, or you want to filter by sections such as the blog without creating a custom-made filter. That's all cool, but what else?
I jumped that.
But by incorporating this, you will be able to see the different changes that they've implemented and how they have impacted the performance. You can also incorporate Chrome UX data for competitors and monitor how they are evolving over time. Shout out here to Rachel Anderson, who introduced this idea and developed the process for it.
So also the cool thing about what she mentioned in here, so we will send through links to the dashboards that she references so that you can kind of copy the techniques she used for generating those slides. And I'm just going to jump to her wrap up. Oops.
But before I wrap up, I want to give you a few additional tips. First, don't be scared of seeing null values in the Chrome UX report. This only means that there isn't enough data collected for your site yet, or your site is new in the Search Console. This doesn't mean that you shouldn't implement any improvements. You can still implement them and get ready for being tested once you reach Google's visitor threshold. Overcome the site data freshness issues via Screaming Frog. Field data in the Chrome UX report is only reported once per month, but you can run crawls for lab data and tests as frequently as you'd like. Set up your crawl to reoccur bi-weekly or monthly. By doing this, you'll have more data to work with and visualize if any implementations have been made to the site. This will also allow you to showcase the different results to your client and in the same time in the same dashboard, as well as show them the percentage change from when the last implementations have been done. Be wary of Google Data Studio limitations. I cannot stress this one enough. While you may want to view 10 competitors or even all of your competitors' performance in a single page, you might have to reconsider this. If you need to blend data sources, you are limited to up to 5. Errors in Data Studio are also very common, so make good friends with the idea of troubleshooting. My best advice here is to use version control to avoid some messy situations during client calls.
Cool. Okay, so yeah, interesting that basically she's also saying that you can set Screaming Frog to update automatically. So once that Data Studio is running, you've got Screaming Frog automatically running. Basically, you've got a client report on Pagespeed that is you never need to touch again, which is kind of cool. The other one I was going to mention. So so this was a bit of a tie because I know we've got Michael in the audience who did a talk on Google Consent Mode. Unfortunately, I was on a call at exactly that time. So apologies, Michael, I didn't actually see your talk, but I'm going to sort of watch the replay of it afterwards. But I've got, I want to do a follow-up talk in 2 weeks' time about consent mode. So we'll sort of maybe kind of join forces on that one in a couple of weeks' time. So instead, what I picked was the talk that I did see, which was more in Brighton SEO the next day. And a guy called Roy Hope did quite an interesting view of when doing SEO keyword research. Instead of doing keyword research based off the term, the phrase, he kind of turned it upside down and ended up looking at which sites were ranking in let's say a top 10 search, looking at the social entities for those links, so Facebook, Twitter, etc., and then reversing, working out the followers of those social entities, and then running a persona analysis on those followers. And he basically was able to work out these kind of persona groups and what types of content those persona groups consumed. And then he went and targeted those particular newspapers to go and to push content to them and build backlinks. And it was good because the content he was creating was targeted against those personas rather than targeting against the keywords. So it was quite a kind of an upside down strategy in the sense that going after the people, not the phrases, but quite an ingenious kind of approach and quite a sort of unique. So I thought I'd give that a bit of a sort of shout out. I'm just going to jump to his talk on here.
For crafting better content and more engaging digital PR campaigns. So for us, we're looking at global payroll. We understand that there's co-founders and engineers, the creator economy, HR, recruitment leaders and managers, and payroll and tax leaders and managers that we all want to target through content and digital PR to improve our ranking for the global payroll keyword segment and ultimately generate more users and more conversions. So this is a different view with an audience where we start to see those segments broken down. Now I'm going to drill into a couple. We're going to look into the co-engineer segment, which ultimately are the co-founders and engineers, the creator economy, who are interested in global payroll solutions as they scale their businesses. And suddenly, through an analysis of the influencer entities within audience, we can very quickly identify all of those influencer entities and get a better understanding of who the co-founder and engineer segment on Twitter really are, and how that can help to inform our SEO strategy for the keyword segment global payroll. Well, they use and are familiar with Stripe. They use Figma for developing web page templates and developing products. They use Notion for developing companies. They use Loom for communicating async. They use Remote for global employment. And you get a wide range of all of these highly relevant influence entities that you can approach for digital PR, that you can listen to for content topic ideation, to help to develop your SEO strategy for global.
I think the thing I found interesting from my view on this one was, in the same way that Google Analytics is trying to shift to kind of a user-based reporting, he's also kind of saying with SEO shifting to targeting people and where those people hang out rather than what they search for. So there's a kind of an overlap on analogies there.
Global payroll. Now let's look at HR recruiting, for instance, and by clicking into that segment, we get a list of all of their influence entities, the top publications in the industry, the top blogs. And through the social behavioral data analysis, we get affinity scores for each. So we can prioritize and we can
just jump to his conclusion, which is around here.
For employees working remotely, the state of global payroll report, a global salary compensation calculator, global remote companies funded by socially conscious VCs, and maybe a survey around global attitudes to distributed teams. And now that's going to be relevant to our SEO personas that are active within our keyword topic of global payroll, as we've gone through the strategic process that we talked through in this talk. So some ideas to wrap up. So digital PR ideation as well from that, remote team management, modernized global payroll, diversity in global companies, international scale-ups. And
if you're doing SEO keyword research, or even if you're in the kind of AdWords world and looking for an alternative to targeted keywords, that's some interesting kind of tips with the tools that he's used for detecting those kind of user clusters mentioned kind of in his talk. There was one other, I won't play the video for this, but I thought it was interesting for agencies, and it was a lady that did a talk on being in a client-side role and what she learned in terms of getting the best out of agencies, and also understanding how understand the situation she was in and being in client-side. So that was quite interesting to see kind of through her eyes and see how the problems are different, obviously client side versus agency side. So that I found that quite kind of insightful as well. So we're kind of at a sort of question point. This is me from the party at Brighton SEO. So we'll probably maybe open open up to audience questions, and we should be able to kind of put people on the stage if they want to sort of ask a sort of question. So if you press raise your hand, we should be able to kind of put you on the stage. Now this is a bit of an experiment on Zoom, so we'll see what happens. Michael, did you want to ask a question?
I've just noticed that there is an actual Q&A section on there, but I've not seen that before.
Okay. Well, we can invite people to the stage, I guess. That's. Let's try this, see what happens. Oh, it might be if you're on mute, obviously, then it's not going to work.
Volunteered.
I believe. How's it going?
Yeah, good, thanks. Yeah, sorry I missed your talk. I literally got like a call just at the point where you were doing your consent mode one. So I'm going to sort of check it out later. Did you have a sort of question or any burnings of things that you wanted to mention?
Oh, the only thing that's been, I guess, repeating on my mind, particularly that talk by Yali from Snowplow about moving to, server-side GTM and first-party tracking. Just wondering whether you had any inclination of what the timeline to that looks like. Should we be preparing for that now, or is it, in the next 3 years? How urgent do you think it would be?
Yeah, it's a good question. I mean, I didn't realize quite how urgent it was until we actually got asked to do a check on AdWords clicks versus AdWords sessions. And basically just comparing, because the thing about AdWords clicks is you can't really block an AdWords clicks, it's part of the redirect. Whereas obviously the session can be blocked, be it ad blockers or even not opting out. And on this is quite a large sample, and it was, the client in this case was like 14% down, largely since start of was that, that's kind of 2020, it was 10% down, 2021 15%-ish or 14% there down. So it's kind of, it's becoming, it's moving in the wrong direction, unfortunately. And as Apple sort of shifts its focus more onto privacy, we're going to be in a situation where we don't really have much of a choice. I think the only thing that I did take away, which I'm sure you're, is obviously with Google using a kind of, for people that opted out, using them for kind of sampling, and the sort of let's say we've got, was it the fork on here? So the they've said, no, I don't want to be tracked, be it this 15%. That's then used to times the 85% back up to the 100%. But the thing about that is, at the moment, it's only a GA4 feature or an AdWords feature. It's not part of GA3. So it kind of forces people to sort of have to migrate to GA4 because of the fact that this rescaling feature is only in GA4, because obviously GA3 is now, there's no further development on that. So it's going to become, so the problems are also become when that sample of rescaling goes down to, let's say, 10%. If you've got like a 90% opt-out, then it's pretty difficult to get a decent sample size or rescaling rate. I don't know if you saw when Apple rolled out ITP on Facebook, and Facebook literally went down to a 10% opt-in, which is crazy.
Yeah, absolutely.
So the answer to that really is kind of, it really needs to be start planning for it now. So we're already doing, we're running a server side and GA4 in parallel to GA3, and we're just also doing check to see what difference we're getting between the two. So we've got GA4 is actually available in Data Studio as a native sort of plugin. You don't need Supermetrics or anything to access it, and we're just doing data blendings to see what the difference is between the two at the moment. Yeah, I mean, when Google did this, they said people were seeing, like, either, in this case, someone's reporting a plus 46% increase in conversions, they're saying here, but at the moment we're seeing between a 5 and 10% boost in tracked sort of sessions from server side. But we're about to roll one out in China, where obviously GA gets pretty much blocked in China, so that would be interesting to see the difference in that domain. But yeah, so but also bearing in mind as well on that the people that opt out, because there was an interesting talk actually on a Measure Summit actually on Friday last week. I'll just share my screen. If you get a chance, Alex Langshaw from Cardinal Path, he did a great talk about the future of privacy and tracking, and the kind of the walls that are being put up between in different sort of tech kind of stacks. So he's basically saying that Apple basically are putting barriers up to everyone else, apart from if they're using like Apple ads. So you kind of, and the same, like Google says, okay, on AdWords, if you use Google Analytics, you get the cost data obviously automatically, but if you want to use Adobe, good luck, sort of thing. And it's those walled barriers are kind of starting to go up higher. So his talk was interesting in the sense that he's suggesting that you might need to have a specific vendor for each kind of ecosystem. So basically you need Apple ads for Apple, Google Analytics for AdWords, Facebook Insight for Facebook, and Amazon Insight, wherever it is. that's kind of his thoughts on where things are going, which I think is kind of interesting.
Yeah, sounds like a lot of work, definitely.
Well, it's good for analysts because we have to deal with 4 tools rather than 1. But an interesting thought on where things are going. But yeah, I think the other takeaway, which is also actually on Measure Summit, which is interesting, is optimizing. So Brian Clifton did a talk about optimizing cookie pop-ups.
Cool.
And he is quite clever in the sense that he basically said, like, shift over to a modal cookie wall, because you've got to force people to ask the question, but just make it really difficult to find the opt-out button. Yeah, it was like, I mean, it was still there, but it was like sort of 2 clicks to get to, and then you found it. Whereas the easy button was always the allow, close this annoying warning sort of thing.
Sure.
I think that the piece that's missing from the puzzle at the moment, which is in the second part answer to your question, Michael, is we're all kind of waiting for WebKit or Safari to introduce a consent mode. You might have noticed whenever you visit like Google Maps, it says the browser says, "Are you happy to share this location with a site?" There's not a kind of consent mode feature baked into the browsers in the same way there is a HTML5 share location. So we're kind of missing that piece of the puzzle. So because that doesn't exist, that's the only thing that's kind of holding back Apple and IE from, hitting the kill switch sort of thing, because websites are still struggling to deal with cookie opt-in. So but yeah, good question. I'm just seeing if we've got anyone else that wants to ask a question, or if you got a follow-up one, Michael.
Oh, good question.
What was this on the talks that you saw on MeasureFest and also Brighton SEO? What were your favourites?
Oh yeah, good question. It all seems so long ago now. It's just times are flying.
Did you see Measure Summit last week?
No. I think I've got to log in to watch the repeats, perhaps, but I haven't got around to it yet, sadly. In fact, possibly not my favourite talk, but certainly a bit of a controversial one, was one where they were talking about core web vitals again, which seems to be quite a hot topic, understandably. But in the cookie banners can serve, is it render blocking JavaScript?
Yeah.
Yeah, and you had people saying, "Oh, you don't need a cookie policy banner anyway." So you sort of do, but it was more how you get around that, and that's something that I've been taking a look at. I guess my question in relate to that is, have you been doing anything of that yourself, seeing how you can make all parties happy in terms of compliance and page load speed and SEO ranking, that sort of thing?
Yeah, we have. I think so we've had one recently with OneTrust. We've had 2 actually OneTrust sites, but both where they're using Autoblock. So for the audience, just so they know that basically there's kind of 2 ways of adding kind of cookie solutions or cookie management systems to a site. It's either loaded in just the banner, or it's a banner and a script that blocks all of your tags. So the second one is OneTrust calls it auto block. I think CookieBot calls it like auto category or something like that. But basically those tools, they end up doing the categorization. The other option is you doing the categorization either in GTM using either consent mode or blocking triggers. But the advantage of those methods with Autoblock is that it's quite difficult for stuff to kind of get through the hoop or get through the gaps. But at the same time, they also really slow down the site because they scan through all of the code on the site, and that's not a good thing. So I'm just seeing on here, I've got a screenshot of Autoblock. Here you go. So this is auto block versus manual, and you can see site speed on auto block is not great. So what we so we always try and get them to move across from like auto block through to manual. But for bigger companies, it's not always that easy to do that, because the compliance officers are like, well, hold on a sec, that means that a person can like accidentally deploy a remarketing tag on the page. The answer to that is yes, they can, but also the developers could accidentally disable auto block or put a cookie in the wrong bucket, and then it's the same problem. So what we've done at the moment, we're doing a migration actually and some testing, because we basically got to get both developer buy-in and compliance team buy-in. But the key one really is two parts. One, and this is more about a sales strategy internally for these bigger companies, is that on the SEO side, that the manual block is significantly faster, so you don't get a render penalty. So loads quicker, and then the other bit is if it's loaded via GTM, which auto block has to be loaded outside of GTM, whereas manual mode can be loaded in GTM. If it's loaded via GTM, then the person within that enterprise has the ability to change vendors or cookie management solutions a lot easier. So let's say they're in a yearly contract with OneTrust or similar. It means that they can then go to OneTrust and say, look, if you don't give me a decent price on this yearly renewal, I'm going to switch to Cookiebot or switch to TrustArc or whatever. So it's more the thing there is more about the benefit to the client from that switch, in the sense that it gives them kind of leverage over those solutions. So that's what we found at the moment, but it has been tough trying to get a buy-in from compliance teams to switch over to sort of loading GTM and getting GTM to do consent mode. My other kind of bugbear about that as well, and this is obviously in the AdWords world, is that on that manual block, the AdWords conversion tag gets marked as a remarketing one, not performance one, which kind of sucks a bit really, because if a user says, oh, I'm okay to be tracked, but I don't want to be remarketed to, then conversions just end up stopping. So I'll just show you the screenshot of what I mean by that. Sorry, where is it in here? Here we go. So it's this is the other problem. So this is on the manual mode. This is a known issue that the AdWords conversion, which is a performance tracker, gets bucketed as an ad storage, even though technically it's used to take people out of a remarketing bucket and it's used for performance tracking. So it's kind of like, that's not a great move by Google on that one. And also the other one, they've got call tracking, which doesn't get put into any bucket at all, which so you get to choose on that. So to answer your question, Michael, so yes, we always recommend shifting from auto block to manual block, because it gets around that render blocking issue, which improves site speed and improves SEO as an SEO signal, and we try and get them to move over to consent mode, with the slight caveat of obviously that issue with the AdWords conversion pixel, which I wish Google would kind of correct. But yeah, one other one actually, I was on Brighton SEO. There's a talk by the guy who's now at Moz, who was actually talking about site speed. And the other issue that comes up is A/B testing, because the anti-flicker code that also affects. It's not really render blocking, but it affects cumulative layout shift, because it basically turns everything white. Stuff moves around behind in the background, and then the page loads. And it's like, actually, we want to be able to do A/B testing, but we don't want to get an SEO penalty for doing it. And it's like, there's not an ideal solution for that, unfortunately. So Yeah.
I wonder what that would mean for like headless CMSs, where it's all just like a page which dynamically loads behind like a transition. That's something I'm going to have to look into, I think, unless you have first-hand experience of that already.
Yeah, the only solution I thought for it would be, I mean, Google Optimize does have an API. So for instance, on A/B tests on mobile phones, they use the Google Optimize API for app kind of testing. So it is technically possible for a site to do an A/B test doing a server-side test rather than in the browser. But it's quite technically difficult to set that up. So it's you kind of lose the benefit of flexibility and speed. So I think at the moment we're probably just going to go down the route of work out what the winning test is, and then as quickly as possible, and then pin that, or you know, get the developers to then make the change in line, and then you know the anti-flicker would disappear.
Sure. Oh, fair enough.
Yeah, but there is a tool, what's it called? There's a one that specializes in server-side A/B testing, which Matt Gershowitz built. I forgot what it's called now. I'll send it through to people afterwards in the notes. But server-side testing is also quite a bit more expensive. Like, so it's more for kind of enterprise companies that that want to that would need that or do that. I'm just seeing if we've got any other people that want us to jump on the stage or ask a question. We've got just gonna if you in the live chat, if someone wants to ask a question, or I can do invite to stage. We'll see if anyone's might just randomly kind of invite people and see what happens. Let's see. Okay. Oh, someone's got a question. Here we go. Let's ask to talk. So, Dazen, I hope I pronounced that correctly.
Yeah. Hi.
Hiya.
Can you hear me?
Yep.
Okay. It's Drazen.
Okay.
Nice to meet you, everyone.
Okay.
Okay, so regarding the server-side A/B testing, well, actually, well, it's not that difficult in the sense that basically what you only require is okay, there are some situations where basically you want to ditch the optimize JavaScript file completely. So, for example, there are situations where you have two completely different, let's say, checkouts. So it doesn't make much sense to do it through the JavaScript through the front end. So basically, you need to serve two different checkout versions from the web, served by the web server. So in that way, basically you can ditch the Google Optimize JavaScript file and then rely on create a bucket and then pass assign a specific bucket to a visitor, and then send it as an experiment ID, or as an, let's say, even through the Google Tag Manager as experiment variation variable to do Google Analytics. So basically, Google Analytics is the one that collects the data for the optimized results. So if you send that parameters, being the experiment ID and the variation ID in those hits, you will end up with the server-side testing. So with that, basically, you are completely free of flickering, you're completely free from loading the optimized JavaScripts and so on, yet you're still having at least the results and the interface for presenting the results in the Optimize and in Google Analytics as well.
That's a good suggestion. Is there like a template for doing server-side A/B testing in GTM server-side?
Oh, it can be done through the server side, GTM server side as well. But if for that, you don't even need the server side because, so as I said, this is for a specific situations. This is for situations, I mean, it can be implemented in all situations, but generally due to the caching and so on, it is good to implement it in situations where the web server is the one who serves two different versions to the client. So two or more different versions of the page to the client, because you will need basically a completely different. So in those situations, you will need a web server to serve a different versions of the page, or you can base it on the cookie that is set to a visitor. But in that case, yeah, who is the one who is creating the different variations? So if you follow me, so with the server side A/B testing, you're missing the JavaScript, the optimized JavaScript, messing around with the page and with the elements on the page.
Yeah, understood. I think that's a good kind of case study or sort of follow-up example. So yeah, I'm conscious of time a bit now because we're at 6 o'clock. So just one other question for the audience. What topics would they like us to cover in 2 weeks' time? Is there, as I said, is there a particular burning issue? Is there something that people are stuck with? You know, what would people want us to do a bit of more of a deeper dive into? Is it like Google Analytics 4? Is it GTM server side? Is it consent mode? Like what's kind of what's everyone's kind of burning issue?
App tracking.
App tracking. Okay. On what system? iOS or Android? And is it
so
Firebase?
Both. So in general, so the GA4 for the app tracking, yeah. So it's a pretty straightforward, no issues there.
For Firebase it is, yeah.
Yeah, the Firebase, exactly. So I would say that the biggest issue is with the tracking of the attribution, and well, in general, so ad networks. So what's the best approach to tracking the different ad networks and attribution in the apps, especially for the iOS?
Okay, yeah. We'll probably okay. And there's we'll add app tracking kind of to the list. I think it does need to be separate for iOS and Android and Firebase and not. We have, by the way, in the past we've looked at using segment.io, which has some native listeners built into app tracking. So obviously GTM for apps, they got rid of the GTM for apps and just switched only to Firebase only. So the solution, some of the solutions are a bit more limited to other tools such as Segment, etc. So okay, any other and obviously GTM server side is still a kind of hot topic. I mean, on server side, we're just kind of going through the motions on that one. One takeaway, by the way, on server side that we've encountered recently is and this is more on enterprises or companies that are highly sort of privacy or security aware, is make sure the server side domain gets whitelisted in the content security policy. So the content security policy is basically like, it's a thing that says stop all these other code loading unless it's in this whitelist. And if GTM server side is missing from that list, then you're knackered. Like you can't load server side. So we can definitely do server side kind of tips and tricks, having started to kind of use it a bit, and also sort of comparing it with client side. So okay, that's good, and then the apps one as well. I did put, by the way, I found it was Conductrix was the tool I was trying to think of, which it wasn't kind of I wasn't thinking of before. Great. Okay, well hopefully that's been helpful, people. And as I said, we'll send sort of follow-up recordings and slides exercise afterwards. And as I said, we'll probably try and get this rolling a bit more frequently and sort of add a bit of sort of structure to it. And we may even ask people to sort of post questions kind of ahead of time. So yeah, so that's it from me. And my fun sort of fact for today, I'm randomly wearing a Cookie Monster t-shirt just because, well, it's an analytics webinar, so had to be done. Yeah, we'll confirm that the theme for 2 weeks time. All right, thanks everyone.
Thanks, guys.